All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Hockey Bros podcast. Before we get started today, we wanted to talk a little bit about the channel, which my brother's going to do in about 30 seconds, um, just to kind of let you guys know what's coming this season and forward, um, for the future of the channel and kind of what we want to do with our with our content. Which is kind of fun for us getting into, we're Florida hockey. Well, we're Florida Panther fans, but we kind of want to expand a little bit. My name is David. I'm joined by my brother Dario. So yeah, Dario, why don't you kind of give the people listening a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be doing going forward.
Yeah, so I think we've been sort of looking at all the content we've done and the engagement we've gotten with fans and stuff, and I think it makes sense for us to sort of focus more on like a Panthers and Leafs sort of podcast. Obviously, we're Panthers fans. I think we cannot move away from that. We would love to have more Panther fans follow us because we definitely want to break down things about how the Panthers are run, the roster, and all of that. But I think through the lens of how the league compares or how things are in context with the rest of the teams in the league. So not just about Panther content, but Panther content again in the eyes of how all the teams match up, how the teams compare, how the teams are run, just to make it interesting for other fan bases and other fans. And then also the Leafs, just obviously the biggest market, biggest fan base. There's always a lot of drama. We love to follow those shows. We love to follow the content as Panthers fans. We have a strong fan base down here, but definitely not as big. And then there's not a lot of coverage of the team, not nearly to the extent that you have up there. And as hockey fans, and Leafs, I guess you could say haters, but that's not the actual word. I think, I guess we're just curious. And I would say that, we've been told before in other videos from Leafs fans that we seem to consume more Leafs content than even they do. So I figure why not combine that and like make a podcast and rebrand a bit to the Hockey Bros, where yes, we're Panthers fans and we might cover some of that. And now the Panthers are a relevant franchise. So I think that makes it easier. But, really talk about the Leafs more consistency, talk about the Atlantic, about the league. And maybe be more consistent with our content, maybe do some reaction videos, some shorter like breakdown videos about things we hear, or even responding to like a show or a pundit, or a rumor, things like that. And then doing our longer videos toward the end of the week where we maybe break down a topic that's more in the weeds. But yeah, I just hope that, if you've been following us or if you just happen to come across this episode where we're going to get into a few things about the Leafs and the Panthers, that you can come along for the ride. We just like to be fans that are educated and informed and try to give our opinions and have some fun. So yeah, if you're a Leafs fan, a Panthers fan, just a hockey fan of any place, and you just want hockey content throughout the year, just to get some conversations, have some fun, recommend that you subscribe and follow us, and support the channel. We're trying to grow it. And yeah, just, kind of leaning into what we like to talk about the most. Why not own it? It's really fun for us anyway. So hopefully it's fun for the Leafs fans, for Panthers fans, for everybody.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just it's not about being right or wrong. It's just I feel like, and you feel this way as well. We can provide a different perspective when as a Leafs fan, or even just the Oilers and the Bruins and all these other teams that it happened to us with the Rangers. Once you go listen to what's out there after the games, and a lot of that content is just kind of dumbed down or just very basic. The game was boring, or you get weird comments like that. So it kind of started for us once, when the Panthers eliminated the Leafs 2 years ago, and it we started consuming a lot of those shows with Kipper and Bourne and Steve Dangle we knew from before, but we started to listen to those guys, JD Bunkis, TSN, the Overdrive guys, and there's just a lot of it is just that we really enjoy that content. You almost wish that we had that for the Panthers or small market teams like the Panthers, but yeah, that's what we'll be doing, and we'll get started with it today, right? So why don't you introduce us to that topic today?
Yeah, man. So I wanted to react to what I've seen, the trend that I've seen over the last few weeks from Leafs pundits. I guess pundits is the word I use to sort of generalize people who have podcasts, people who work on TV, people who commentate on this and do all kinds of Leafs coverage and opinions. So it's kind of an umbrella term. I don't mean experts. I just mean people like Steve Dangle and, like you mentioned, Keeper and Born and JD Bunkis and TSN and Overdrive and all the people who follow the Leafs and who talk about the Locked On Leafs guys. Like we consume a lot of this content for fun. It's entertaining. And lately I've seen what you and I have talked about in the past, like the amnesia that sets over the summer for the Leafs. And to be fair, in the past I've said Leafs fans and I've generalized with the fans, and I'm coming to realize, looking at the comments and responses, that generally speaking, a lot of the Leafs fans who are more educated tend to have a more realistic view of their own team. And I know that we've been made fun of in the past for like consuming more of their content, right? Like I mentioned that. So, but I think that what I've seen over the last few weeks is, and just to use a few examples, like I've seen Steve Dangle do a roster breakdown, and all of a sudden he went from like being mad about the team and, not trading Marner and like, being down on the team to like now saying this roster is stronger than last year. And then I've seen the glutton for punishment guys pick the Leafs to win the Atlantic Division this year. I've seen the Locked On Leafs guys rank their goalie tandem like third in the Atlantic. I've seen the TSN Overdrive guys start to shift the tone about Marner staying in the team. Maybe Berube can get the best out of him. And you can just see how all of that is kind of already turning. And I can expect Borny from Kipper and Born, sort of being positive about the team, about, like he always is. He's always going to find the silver lining and always say, oh, so-and-so can take a step and so-and-so can come in and do this and do that. I kind of want to do today as an exercise to respond to the pundits. Again, this is not for the fans, though, I'm sure the rah-rah fans like the Panthers have them that don't care about the actual reality. I want to actually respond to these pundits. And I get it. I also want to say, I know they're trying to create content and excitement. That's their job. They have to get fans to care about the team. They have to get fans to want to follow the team, to get a bit of excitement, even if they fail. Because if you're apathetic or just down on the team, there's less of a chance that fans are going to want to follow the content. So I totally get that Dangle's just trying to sell stuff. In that last video, he seemed like a commercial for Puckpedia. I don't know. He probably got paid and it was selling Puckpedia. So it was more really about that and like the roster and what he really believes, I think. And also he's setting up the excitement because when the Leafs inevitably fail, and I say inevitably because, again, we'll break down the roster, then he can do his rants and he can say how he's disappointed he is. So again, I'm not blind to the fact that all of these shows have to create a mirage, have to have different opinions, have to create excitement. And they may not always be fully honest about how they may feel. We're creating content, we're trying to be honest, but we're not like an established media entity. So for us, it's a little bit easier just to shoot straight. So having said that, they still have a responsibility to talk to their fan base and to give some sort of opinion. And I respect people like JD Bunkis, who sometimes has wild opinions or hater opinions. I'm not the biggest fan, but he's one of the few people in the media that I've seen still holding the line on like, this team is not better. And they've really, he said he wouldn't want to use the word bamboozle, but the press conference and everything. And all of a sudden, when you look at the team, it's like the same old shit. And it's kind of a proof that the team isn't really going to move in the direction that it needs to move. The fact that they haven't even talked to Marner about a trade, it's all you need to know about the fact that he's going to get extended. So, I just want to respond to this positive turn that always happens, right, as you go into camp and stuff, and actually get into the layers and break the roster down like Dangle did, but compared to the Panthers from a playoffs perspective. So I'll throw it back to you, but what we can probably do first is just look at the lines for the Leafs and I can summarize what Dangle said, and then we look at the forward lines for the Panthers to start there and just put it in a playoff context. Let's imagine that this was a matchup, and then really break down how matchups are really what matters the most for the playoffs, and then show you why the Leafs have a lot of holes.
Yeah, and if you've been, a Leafs fan for the past 5 years, let's say, with Keefe there's been sort of a trend every year. Once they get into the playoffs, they play really well during the season, even though last year was kind of a bit of an outlier. They struggled a bit, even though it was Matthews' best season. And they kind of just get in, they keep repeating these patterns because some of these guys, Nylander, Marner, they just can't play that physical style. And it's just much harder to score in the playoffs, as you can see. And and we'll get into that. And, they always say that they need depth scoring, which you do, but it's not that simple and it's not that easy to have, guys in your third line step up when it's Nick Robertson or McMahon or whoever. Um, but yeah, man, I think that I agree. I think that there's a clear agenda with these guys once the season's about to start, and you have to play to your strength. I mean, Steve Dangle, I never loved the content, but it is fun and entertaining, and that podcast is probably one of the worst out there when it comes to hockey. But not that ours is any better. But yeah, man, let's get started with the lines. I don't know how you want to do this. You want to start with like the top line, or you want to?
Yeah. I want to go line by line because again, this is more of a matchup thing and how we interpret matchups. People think of lines or players as just scorers or talent or points or what I'm saying, versus how it matches up in an actual playoff series. And I think this is why people get surprised or frustrated when a good team on paper, like the Rangers, like the Leafs, aren't have the level of consistency maybe that the Bruins have or Carolina has or even Tampa used to have, when they don't always have the deepest team. In Carolina's case, you could argue they have a deeper team, but they don't have the top end talent that Toronto has or the Rangers have. And yet the Rangers and Toronto tend to struggle more. They're underperforming consistently based on their talent, right, in regular season. Compared to some other teams where the Bruins didn't have much. I mean, the Bruins broke a record with a roster that people thought was going to go down. And then even last year when Bergeron and Krejci left, everybody thought they might even miss the playoffs. And, they put up a fight against both the Leafs and the Panthers. So yeah, let's do a line by line and just kind of look at it. When you look at the first line for Toronto, which is right now projected, it's all projected, we know it's Matthews, Marner on the right, and Nice on the left. That seems to me pretty much what you should expect as a top line. It's a solid line in terms of obviously the scoring. Marner and Matthews have played together forever. They can put up a ton of points. And Nice is expected to sort of grow, take another step. He's a big physical guy and looked decent in the playoffs toward the end. Looked a bit more physical, a bit more aware of the game and the speed of the game, even though Marchand sort of laid him out. But yeah, so that's a solid, good, first line, for a regular season. Now in the playoffs, they would be going up again, projected against Barkov, Reinhardt, and Verhaeghe, right? And what we've seen over the last 2+ years with that line, right, and those guys together is that what happens when you have that matchup is Matthews is a better scorer than Barkov. Barkov can absolutely shut down Matthews. He's done it with McDavid. He's done it with Panarin and Zibanejad, and he's done it with Kucherov. He's done it with every other name, Pasternak. Like that was that crazy stat that like in the first 3 rounds at 5-on-5, he'd only allow 1 goal from all the top players in those when he was on the ice. He's that level of player, right? And he can score. We saw how Barkov put up points, score some key goals, go to the front of the net. A lot of Barkov's goals, for every one that was in the rush, like against the Oilers, he had like 2 or 3 that were just broken plays or rebounds in front of the net. He was crashing the net using his size. But he's a guy that's going to be tough for anybody to go against, even Matthews, right? He's a big guy just like Matthews is. Then you look on Reinhardt. Reinhardt can give you some key scoring and also was 4th on Selke votes this year. He's an elite 2-way player, proven it over the last few years. He can really defend, doesn't cheat. It's going to make it hard on Marner. It's going to keep him to the outside. It's going to chase him. Not going to be easy to beat. Verhaeghe has proven to be a clutch scorer, somebody who's physical, who can hit. At times, he has led the Panthers in hits in certain games in the playoffs. And he has a lot of speed too. So when you look at that matchup, what happens is all of a sudden Nice has to contain Verhaeghe, right? All of a sudden Marner has to also contain a smart guy like Reinhardt is. And then you have Barkov and Matthews in terms of, even if he was a wash, now you're taking away that your top 2 or your top 3 players in terms of being able to really just put up a ton of points. Now you're going to have to rely on the power play. Now you have to rely on a lot of other things, like it's happened to the Rangers, like it's happened to the Oilers. And now we see over a 7-game series that can be a recipe to lose. You be competitive, but you'll lose. And so when I look at that matchup in the regular season, Leafs are going to put the most points, right? Reinhardt's probably not going to get to 50 goals again. So I guarantee you that line with Nice might score 20, 25 goals. Like they're going to put up the points in the regular season. I have no doubt that that's a very, very good regular season line. Come playoff time, I look at that line, and as we said before, if you know you have a good solid system, I'm not scared of that line. I think it can be kept to the outside. I think they can be hit. I think they can be contained, and I think you can also go on the counter and and try to do some damage against them because your guys, again, Reinhardt, Verhage, and Barkov, they're now proven playoff scorers and performers. So that's the way that I would look at it. It's like if I'm the Panthers and I look at that matchup, I know it's not an easy matchup, but I think it's a winnable matchup. And I think it's harder to say that from the Leafs perspective because that top line for the Panthers isn't looking to score 3 goals a game. It is looking to shut you down first and maybe score the key goal here when you need it.
Yeah, and I think that's the main difference. I think that if you're that top line from the Leafs and you're the coach there, you are going to be tempted to just try to get that line to score. So once like both sides, have defined roles, it's just so much easier for whoever's better at what they do to succeed. And when you have a good defense, especially, I think it's just the pairing of Barkov and Reinhardt, primarily that kind of shuts down the other team's top line and shuts it down. It doesn't really shut it down. Like Mike Davis still had a great finals and all, but Draisaitl, even Hyman, like those guys couldn't really get going when they were out there. That's why I believe Draisaitl gave the little dirty elbow to Barkov. But I think it's just tricky once you have those players, and I think that's why a lot of these guys like JD Bunkis are kind of fed up because that it's just not going to work. It's going to be a struggle for them to score against not just the Panthers top line, but any other top line in the league. It's going to be tough. And there's this emphasis on offense when it comes to hockey and in the NHL. A lot of fans think that if you have a team with a lot of, good offense, that you're just going to get to the Stanley Cup and win it, which is what happens with the Oilers every year. Great offense, great offense, great offense, and then they can't get over the hump once a team takes away the middle of the ice and all you have is McDavid skating around like crazy out there. The Avalanche should be winning the Stanley Cup every year. They have great speed. They're a wild team. They're all over the place, and it's not that easy. So once you start getting into the matchups, especially on your top two lines, then you can get into the depth scoring and all the other facets of the game that matter. So I think that's the issue for the Leafs. I think you just, Nice might be the only one there that can maybe provide some physicality, but our top line or the Panthers top line is going to forecheck almost every time. They're going to look for the space, and they're very talented on offense. Reinhardt is finding his shooting skill. Like he's been shooting really well, making smart plays during the season. Overtime winner backhand against the Kings was a great play. Very smart guy, high IQ. He's known to be that type of person. And then Barkov is just a genius, man. He's just great at what he does. He's a natural out there, and Verhage is about as clutch as they come. So when you look at it from that perspective, as far as just the matchup, the Panthers are always 9 times out of 10 they're gonna win that series, in my opinion, as long as you have those guys performing at the level that they are. And it's just there's enough of a sample size now with Matthews and Marner where they're gonna get their stats here and there, but once it gets tough and physical, it's a whole nother game. So
and then this is the thing about the matchups is like even if you start to go down the line, right? You go to the second line, and I'll go with what Dangle said, even though the projected line here is a little bit different, but just to do it as an exercise. He said that the second line could be Tavares, Nylander, and Robertson, because they're still expecting Robertson to eventually sign. They need another forward. I don't think they'll trade him. They don't have a lot of cap anyway to substitute him for a more expensive player. So let's say that's the line. I mean, that line to me, just on paper, like atrocious on defense. Nylander, Robertson, and Tavares are not going to be a very good defending line. And so that's going up again against Bennett, Kachuk, and Rodriguez. And so imagine that Sam Bennett already has plastered Tavares in the playoffs, who's now a year older. He's going to hit Tavares. He's going to physically wear him down. Kachuk, yes, Nylander can skate faster, can try to dance around him, but Kachuk is going to go to the net. He's going to be physical. He's going to smash him. He's going to make him work. And, Kachuk can score in the playoffs. And so now Nylander, yes, he's going to have some chances to be able to skate around on the offense or try to go on a break. But at the same time, he's going to have to defend Kachuk, who always is either behind the net or in front of the net. And Nylander does not like to be in those areas on defense. He wants to be up top by the blue line cheating. So that matchup already, to my mind, gives an advantage to the Panthers. Because in the playoffs, you can dance all you want and shoot from the outside. These goalies are locked in. If they can see the shots or the defense can block it, less of a chance that you can score. Much easier to go to the net and like Kachuk does and try to get some goals there. So when I look at that second line, I see a physical playoff driven line. And Rodriguez, by the way, proved in the playoffs that he can score some key goals, that he can take off in a game. He's a very fast skater. He's a really solid two-way guy, can play center, can defend. Not a a tiny small guy. He just doesn't mind the physicality. So again, you have that going against Robertson. I feel like Rodriguez would eat him up, with the lack of experience in the playoffs. And so again, it's a matchup. It's like playoff. In the regular season, that second line is going to score more than the Panthers' second line. But in the playoffs, just the makeup. And again, Bennett can skate, shoot, pass, score. We saw it this year. He sweep setups, scoring dirty goals in front of the net, all the constant stuff he does. Kachuk, he's proven guy in the playoffs. And then Rodriguez this year showed that, Duke can take over a game with the scoring he did against the Oilers and stuff too. And, he's shown he's a clutch guy. He has a really good shot. So anyway, that to me, that doesn't get better in the second line. And I'll go through the other lines for the forwards and then we'll stop and then we'll do defense. But third line quickly, they have Max Domi, Cali John Crook, and then it would be Bobby McMahon maybe. Right now it's Holmberg there, but let's say that Robertson's up top. So you have McMahon. That's more of a two-way line, except for Domi, and really solid line. And I get it. That's a solid line. But that, again, it's going against Lundell, Lustrine, and Samoskevich and Mackey, who probably going to slot in. Now you have Lundell, two-way player against Domi. I'll take him any day over Domi. Domi is going to play in the periphery, try to set up passes, stay on the outside. Lundell is elite two ways. He's shown it. He took over the Rangers series. He shut down the Rangers. He shut down the Leafs with the line that he had Lustrine and Reinhardt that year, a couple years ago. He was the line that Maurice kept going to match up against the first line for the Leafs and shut them down. So I'll take him over Domi. John Crook, solid player. I'm actually a fan. He's also going to have to contend with, Samoskevich, who's a really fast skater, a scorer. And then Lusty, who's again a lead two ways against Bobby McMahon. Let's say that it's a wash in terms of what both players can do. You don't have another advantage on the third line, and I feel like we're much stronger in the center position on that third line and in a proven third line. So again, doesn't get better. And then just to close it out, David Camps, Conan Dewar, Pontus Holmberg, Ryan Reeves. You could even slot up Easton Cowan, who's a kid. I don't think he'll in the playoffs he will give you much this year. But that fourth line, you're matching it up against Thomas Nosek, Jesper Bockquist, Mackenzie Whistle, probably Justin Sordev, probably Gadjevich, whoever you want to slot in there. We have more speed and skill on the fourth line actually this year, and we still have physicality with Nosek and Whistle and Greer and Gadjevich. You can rotate. The Panthers have depth. That fourth line can have about 6 different guys that can play there right now who are legit like NHL level players. And so, yeah, again, I look at the 4 matchups, and I think from a playoffs perspective, I really like our top 6. I think our third line can match up really well, and Lundell has an advantage on that matchup. And I feel the fourth line, we have the speed, we have the skill, and we have the physicality, depending on what the Leafs put out there. If the Leafs go with more skill, we can match up the skill. If they go more like Reeves and the big guys, we can put a Gadjevich out there. We can put some of these guys out there. And people, Mackenzie Whistle was actually projected because he played back-to-back seasons with Chicago on the fourth line as a starter. I think it'll be more Justin Sordev, who's a younger guy and who's excellent two ways for the Panthers and has offensive skill. But either way, you can match up really well. The Panthers have never shied away from playing the fourth line in the playoffs. So yeah, man, I just think, again, matchup perspective, the issue with the Leafs is not just names or whatever. Like a lot of the Leafs players are names. They're players. A lot of the bottom 6, some of them are, guys that can play in the fourth line, But it's like, can Domi be a playoff performer? Yeah, he put up, whatever it was, 11 points or 13 points or whatever it was with Dallas. He was also -5, I think. He was, he wasn't playing on the power play. So he was giving up 5 and 5 goals on that third line, like crazy. So he's going to be a liability on defense. That is what you're looking at. It's like, what are your weak points? Are you physical? Domi's not a physical player. People think of him like he's feisty, but he doesn't win board battles. He's not a big guy. He's not that kind of a player. He just doesn't shy away from contact. But you're going up against a team like the Panthers. Like, 80% of that roster isn't going to shy away from anything, so or more. So yeah, man. That just looking at the forwards, I think that that's what Dangle and all these people miss is like this is actually incredibly thin forward lines for the Leafs in the context of a playoff, which is the only context you guys should be looking at. Forget the regular season. If you don't make the regular seasons with these top players, I mean, you're screwed. That's the issue for you guys. And if you get an injury to your top six, if like Mitch Marner's out, Tavares is out, or as God forbid, a center is out in your top six, you get thin like ridiculously quick. So anyway, that's what I noticed about the forwards, and I feel like a lot of the pundits are starting to play down how thin it is. Outside of Bunkis, who said this is probably the worst forward roster the Leafs have had in over 5-6 years.
Yeah, and a lot of that is due to the third and fourth line, and the one mistake I think the Leafs made, beyond not trading Marner when they should have before that July 1st.
They should have traded Nylander, but that's neither here nor there.
That's what I was going to say. I think the biggest mistake they made, honestly, was keeping Nylander, especially for that contract, no trade clause, full term. To me, it's just wild. Nylander does not defend at all. He's so soft. In the playoffs, he just floats out there. He's looking for his opportunity. I love the fact that so many people like Sam McKee, whatever, say that Nylander is such a playoff performer because he gets points or whatever. It's just a weird thing. I think that the theme of this whole comparison is the two-way play, right? Every line that the Panthers have, they have at least two guys that can two-way play. They defend just as well. They defend as a team altogether. It's why Bob has one of his best seasons this past season. It's just a team construct and style, and you extend Lundell for a similar amount of money as the Kings did with Byfield, just because, Byfield can score. But it's just a different type of player, man. And it's come playoff time, it's just a lot more valuable to have those guys than to have, the Elias Petersons and all these guys that kind of, and the Nylanders and the Marners who kind of shy away and can't really get in there and do what they do best, because there's just no space and time to do that in the playoffs. So it's just wild. And then the one playoff matchup that they can talk about is when they beat Tampa in 6, which they got outplayed. And something that you can kind of notice with Tampa is they don't defend that much. They kind of leave Vasi out. They hang him out to dry all the time, and he does great. And that's how they kind of win. That's how they've been able to win their championships. And when that doesn't happen, then it looks different. But if you look at the scoring, the first 2 games of that series against Tampa, the Leafs against Tampa, it was, it was like 6-1 or 7-3 or some wild shit like that, because they're not playing defense. So once you go from that to the Panthers, who had a bunch of no names, other than Kachuk and maybe Barkov at the time, they got shut down. They got punched in the mouth. Were they a little dirty? Yeah, of course. That was the point. The point was to kind of rough them up and take him out of their game. Once that started happening, that's it. That series was over by game 2, at the end of game 2. So, yeah, man,
Bro,
I think...
to know about the Nylanders is in the 11 games in the playoffs that they lost against the Panthers, right, where they beat Tampa, finally got the second round, and everybody thought of Nylander as being the only performer during that season, during that playoff run, I guess you could call it, and because he scored that 1 goal against the Panthers and blah, blah, blah. He had 3 hits in 11 games. For a top 6 player of his size who plays that many minutes, for him to have 3 hits in 11 games, it's embarrassing. Like that is unacceptable. And hits are not even like smashing people, because hits, I mean, people get registered hit just by, hitting the guy into the boards or just hitting a guy kind of in the neutral zone, trying to get him off the puck. It just speaks to the lack of physicality and the lack of willingness to do that. His possession metrics in the playoffs, the 4 games he played against the Leafs, where he got really defensive, were like the worst he's had in his career in the playoffs, when he got really physical in that series, when he came back. And when he became like shutdown hockey, his possession metrics went down, because that's not his game. His possession metrics are good when they can dance and play run and gun and just dance around the area because he just keeps the puck in there. It doesn't create a lot of chances, right? But when things get really tight and it goes, there's not a lot of space in the neutral zone, that's where you got to be able to keep the puck. And he's not willing to fight and hit. I'm not saying Marner is either, but to my mind, Marner, at least defensively, he can kill penalties in your top unit. He's excellent on scoring shorthanded goals. He can defend. His defensive metrics are solid. He can steal the puck a lot better than Nylander can. And offensively, if you put him in the right setup, and I just think it's a system issue with the Leafs, his skill set can provide, and especially on the power play, a lot for you. It's just that these guys get in their own way, and it's not just him. He's surrounded by guys that are playing the same way, perimeter hockey and whatever, blah, 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 and not creating the space for him, not banging, not forechecking. Because, Rodriguez isn't going to forecheck the same as Bennett or Kachuk, but then he has a lot of more space on that line because those other two guys are forechecking and fighting behind the net. All of a sudden, he can use his skill. Marner could do that if the guys in his line would be banging. So anyway, that's why for me, Nylander is the guy who's overpaid because of his defensive metrics. He can't kill penalties. He's not going to drive play to the extent that you need him to. He doesn't hustle back to the extent that other players do. And he doesn't hit, just doesn't play physical hockey. So you can criticize Marner or you want for being soft. Nylander's soft, and he's way bigger than Marner. Marner's a tiny guy. Like, he just is. He's a skinny guy. But Nylander has some size, and he doesn't use it. So, these guys get praised if they see one shift where they battle on the board. It's like insane. So anyway, that's my thing with the forwards, man. I just think that the matchup is bad. And to minimize that is kind of silly. It just speaks to the fact that they're either being fake, trying to get excitement, or they're just delusional. And then you just switch real quick to the defense. And if you just go through all the pairings, like Tanev and Riley, let's say that's the top pairing. That's going against Forsling and Edblag. And, Forsling and Edblag went against every team's top lines in the playoffs. And we went through a gauntlet last season in the East, and then Edmonton, who most of their talent is in the top 6. And they were able to do enough, and even Edblag was able to shut down McDavid in a couple games to be able to get those wins. And, the Forsling is an elite defender. So I'm not scared of Tanner being able to block shots or, be more physical. We've played against Hedman. We've played against a ton of guys that block shots and fight and stuff. People make it seem like Tanev is like the only defender who does that in the league. There are people who do that a ton. I mean, they were making fun of that OEL had enough blocks last season with the Panthers that he would have been third for the Leafs on defense and block shots, and he's not even known for that, right? Because that's the system that he was in with the Panthers. He's definitely going to block a lot fewer shots for the Leafs this year, I can tell you that. And then, you have, let's say, McCabe and Benoit as your second pairing, solid, I guess, pairing, not the most exciting, not going to give you really any offense. And that would be Adam Boqvist and Mikola probably for the Panthers. Mikola, really great defensively. Boqvist going to drive some offense, smaller guy, can score. And, we're going to try to treat him as like the Montour, people thinking he's not, as good. I think Boqvist is a guy that the Leafs should have gotten. He can run your power play. He would have cost you $1 million. You could have saved that your OEL money and get a third line center. You could have gotten Adam Henrique for 3.5. This is where the mismanagement, why haven't the Leafs gone after Nick Cousins or Lawrence, guys like that who can play center, give you center depth, player of experience. Nick Cousins can play in your top 6 and at least give you physicality and, create some space for you guys. He did it with the Panthers for a couple of seasons. Like, this is what blows my mind about the Leafs. It's like the obsession with certain players and certain names. And, and OEL is just not a smart signing. I'm sorry. Like, for that price, he's a good player. I thought the Panthers could have kept him for 2.5 for the third pairing, but for 3.75 for 4 years, hell no, man. We did that with Kolikov, the 4 years, for 1.15. You can send that to the minors or even buy it out in a couple of years, and he can give you the serviceable play. Or he could be a 7th defenseman and not really play as much, play 30 games a season the last 2 years of his career for $1 million with a cap going up. That's minimum salary. So, this is where I think it's silly. But yeah, we have Boqvist and probably Mikola, and then a proven veterans in Kolikov and Schmidt as our third pairing, with maybe you have OEL and Liljegren, who will be defensive liabilities probably. So yeah, to me, I feel like, the Panthers don't have the strongest defensive core. And again, Cito might make a trade and try to improve it. But I don't think that the defensive core for the Leafs is that great just because they have OEL. Or I saw OEL play. He's a good player. He's not going to he's a liability back there. The Panthers played him only 15 minutes, 14 minutes per game in the playoffs for a reason. He and Kulikov had to be hitting a bit. So I think Lilligren and him will have to be the same. So yeah, man, that's kind of how I look at it. And the same with the goalie Stollers, and one guy who gets injured at the time. Stollers is not a proven starter. I don't think Stollers works as a starter. He's not going to give you 50 games a season. He's too big for that. Just didn't look that way with the Panthers. Like, he never played more than 2 games in a row. He's already 30 years old or whatever. If you think he's going to magically be your starter if this guy gets hurt, like, and Murray's your backup, like, you're in trouble, bro.
It depends on the matchups. I know that he was good when he was in the Ducks, I think it was.
Yeah, but he was still a backup playing 25 games a season, bro.
Yeah, and like, when you're a backup, you're playing, back-to-back nights, or you're playing against the lesser competition. Like, oh, you get
they put you against the bad team
and the Bruins this week, so Bob is going to take the Bruins, and then you take the Canadians. And if it's the other way around, then Bob takes the Bruins on the first night, you take Canadians on the second night. So like, it's also a matchup thing. And it's not to say that like he is.
And we used him that way this season for real. Like, he's a good goalie. To me, he's the top level backup who plays
he's
25, 30 games a season. And in the playoffs, could in on a pinch for a game or two and give you something.
He's a great guy to have on a team that's going to make the playoffs, just because he's going to get you there. So that's not the point. It's just, I think the moves are kind of weird, especially when you see like the value that's out there. There's a lot of players out there that are cheap that you can get to complement your third line, or maybe play with Nylander in the second line, or Tavares, and they just never done that. Just a funny stat, you said the thing about the hits for Nylander, and it was mentioned the other day. Just a side note, you heard how many hits Johnny Gaudreau had the entire season?
No.
I think he had 3.
No way, that's impossible.
Yeah, I just looked it up.
No, that's impossible.
I could only look it up on StatMuse because the other outlets, I couldn't find the hits. But in comparison, Matty Tkachuk had 152 in like 80 games or 79 games or less. And Gaudreau had 2 hits, I think. But someone said 3 the entire season. But anyway, he's a small guy too. He's 5'8", 160.
He had 2 hits in 81 games, bro.
I don't know how you keep
Hockey Reference. 2 hits in 31.
I don't know how you keep a guy like that, man.
No, that's and the last 2 seasons in Columbus, minus 33, minus 27. And I know the team stinks, but that is, and again, a hit is not, people think of hits like laying people out. That's not how hits are counted. Like, hits are kind of at times a bit bloated. It just means engagement to the body, man. It means like being able to actually, battle on the board. Like, a hit could be you battle on the boards and you just lean your body into a guy probably, or trying to break out and put a body in. Like, it's not hard to get 40 hits a season. Like, every other game you get at least 1 hit. That's just that's called engagement. That's not even called like physical. For him to have 2 hits means that he's out there dancing. He's out there literally not going to the boards, literally not trying to defend. You also hit on defense, right? And he's these guys are not serious players, bro. Some of these guys are not. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just embarrassing. 2 hits. I cannot believe that that's an actual stat. And also, his hit totals for every season: 5 hits, 10 hits, 8 hits, 1 hit in 70 games in Calgary 5 years ago. They should have known. Like, this is the kind of stuff you have to look at a player and be like, yeah, I'm not signing that guy. Tkachuk is the right guy to get. Holy shit, bro.
Yeah, it's what you said. It's the engagement. Like, you're gonna have like 30 hits if you just like skate into someone to try to take the puck. I think they like count almost anything as a hit, but it's just weird, man. Like, whatever. But you mentioned that Nylander stuff, and yeah, it matters in the playoffs. You got to turn it up in the playoffs. And it doesn't mean that you have to replicate what the previous champion did, but since Tampa Bay in 2019 or 2020, that's kind of been the theme a little bit. Even though the Avalanche did a good job when they won their cup, but they also were gritty, So I think it just matters.
Gaudreau has fewer hits in the last 5 seasons combined than Marner had this last year.
Yeah,
that's insane. Like, yeah, Leafs fans, if you think your Marner sucks, like, you at least don't have Gaudreau. Apparently, holy crap!
Embarrassing. I don't understand that. That's beyond like embarrassing. That's that's nobody's gonna respect you, man.
And they probably don't. I think that that's the thing, and this is where, I guess, to open another conversation with the Leafs and the issue with the playoffs is that it isn't just numbers. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's a bunch of other stuff. But I think the issue here, and my point about the pundits, to just kind of go back to that and wrap it up about that, it's like they miss so much of this, right? Like, it's just so easy to not look at these things and really be honest about why this is happening. And the more you understand that, you don't need to know all the specific, you don't need to know all the analytics, and even that doesn't predict everything. But all these different pieces need to fall into place. You need to have a healthy, strong room, in terms of your roster. You need to have leadership. You need to have guys that care, guys that want to fight for each other. Even OEL, in an interview when went to the Leafs to talk about the room and how special group of guys the Panthers were. Cito's really trying to protect that, trying to keep that. Maurice is a coach. The level of accountability, investment in the players. People don't hate him. The players don't hate him, but he holds them accountable. He inspires them, pushes them, and he's a smart guy, surrounded by very smart coaches, making the most out of that roster. That roster is not filled with stars, and you're making the most out of a deep roster. You trust your GM, bringing guys who plays two ways, bringing a lot of leadership into the room. Even the draft prospects who are going to start to come up, most of these guys can play two ways. They can play in the playoffs. They're leaders. They've been captains. They've been in playoff runs in juniors or college. And to me, it's like you want to start to see the logic, right? The identity. And you see other teams kind of trying to do that. And then you can look at the indictments. Like I think a big indictment for the Bruins, as one example, is that they never had a concrete plan to replace Bergeron and Krejci. Like they never had the center position. They should have taken care of the center position in the last 7 drafts. They should have been drafting 1 or 2 centers, even if the second, third round, the way that Cito has been doing with Grayson Souching and Linus Eriksson and Justin Sordiff and all these center guys that eventually you just need one of them to break through, right? Even if it's like a second liner, Lundell, right? Then all of a sudden you can, eventually as you lose Barkov or you lose whatever, you might have one of these guys come up. And you just don't have to just go to free agency or a huge trade all the time, which is harder to pull off because in big trades to get the guys you need, you're going to have to give a lot of stuff up. Or free agency, you're always overpaying most of the time, unless you're a team that can get guys to take a discount. And that's just hard to do in certain markets. And you just have to know that. So the EM for the Leafs has got to know, I'm going to overpay in free agency. So I really got to know how to build my roster in a smart way. And the fact that they gave those contracts to the top guys, as you said earlier, should have traded Nylander 2 years ago. Should I opened up that cap? Should I traded Tavares? Whatever. Don't give out these no trade clauses. What are you doing? Be willing to lose guys in free agency and then use the money and sign 2 really good guys for your top 4 on defense and your top 6 on offense.
Yeah, the dumbest argument is for the Marner trade thing is that you need to win that trade. You don't need to win that trade, at least not on paper. You just need to get rid of that cap hit, and then Tavares comes off the books. So how are you going to pay Nice? How are you going to, pay Cowan if he works out and plays really well? And now you kind of set a standard with this stuff. And to me, like the Nylander thing was the biggest mistake because that was with Treliving. There was no need. He held out to make sure he got his money. And there was just no need to give him that contract. Let him test the market. Guarantee no team was going to give him more than 9.5 or 9. It's just wild to me how they run that shit. And the fact that it's Shanahan and just the way that it's happened the last few years is clearly money motivated. It's just bringing the fans in. They love those guys. As long as Matthews is out there scoring goals. Like if I'm Matthews, man, I'm telling Shanahan, like, what the fuck, bro? Get me some help, man. I'm here scoring damn near 70 goals a season and we don't even win the division. How is that even possible, bro? But, it's a team sport, man. Same thing happened to McDavid with all the assists and all that stuff. It's not that easy to just win the division or be a President's Trophy winner. It's
bro.
wild.
This is just like GM stuff, but bro, you could have gotten Andrew Peak from Columbus. He makes $1 million less than OEL. Could have put him on the third pairing on the right, which is where OEL you'd probably be in the third pairing, right? And you have a big physical guy who's only 26, has a lot of upside, and it was misused in Columbus. And the Bruins now have, right? Because they know that they're investing in him for the next 3 years. You get a guy like that for $1 million less. You use that $1 million to bring Nick Cousins in, who gives you depth in the fourth line and center, or can play in the middle six on the left wing, which is what you need, and that's what he did with the Panthers. He's a left winger to at least give you some toughness. He's a good locker room guy. We just couldn't afford to keep him. Kind of run his course in Florida. There wasn't a room for him, and probably wanted to leave anyway. But those two guys for that money, don't give Lillinger the $3 million. Should I trade a Nylander? Let him go. Let him walk. That's $14 million you got in your pocket. You know what you could do with that? You pay $7.5 million to Montour to come to Toronto, and then you use the rest of your money to bring Jay DeBrusk. You're gonna tell me that having DeBrusk, you know what I'm saying, and having Montour and having Peak and having Cousins, your team isn't deeper, more balanced, more scary in the playoffs to play against than having Nylander there who doesn't defend, or having OEL who's going to be washed pretty soon. Again, just like asset management, money management, Liljegren isn't going to bring you value in the playoffs. I've seen him play year after year. He may have upside. He can score. He might in the regular season. He may give you points. The dude, it's not going to win a championship. He's not going to help you win a championship. He's not that type of player. You can see it. You have to shelter him so much, and he's not going to be sheltered next to OEL. Not going to be sheltered next to Morgan Riley. These guys are just fully offensive players. So this Bogquist is going to be sheltered by Mikola. That's the whole point. You put the guy in the context of he just needs to give you some offense and just don't be a liability on defense. But the rest of the guys can play two ways, are physical and all that. So to me, it's that construction that I think is missing. But Brooks is not as sexy a name as Nylander, and yet he always burns the leaves in the playoffs. And probably outplays Nylander when there's a matchup between them, right? And the thing with Montour, you're gonna tell me Montour can roll your power play better than OEL can? Yeah, last year he had a down year. He was injured, and he has been pretty good for the Panthers, and he gives you the skating, and he gives you, at least some physicality. And it could be Pescio, it could be somebody else, Shea, whatever. You can go after another name for $7.5 million. You can trade for Chychrun. You could do a lot of different things. But for whatever reason, they're just they're in this stasis or whatever. They're just stuck and they just are waiting now for Tavares to take a discount. What kind of management is it? You're not trying to win, bro. You're wasting every single year of Matthews, who may not be around, and even if he is going to be in the 30s after the contract. Go for it, bro.
Yeah, the Montour
especially after 7 or 8 years of the same shit. It's just crazy.
The Montour thing was funny because all they could say is oh, that was a lot of money, which it was. Montour's 30. It was a lot of money. 7 years is a lot. But in 7 years, who knows? 7 million might be, 3.5 nowadays. So it's just something that you do if you want to win. It doesn't. What doesn't make sense to me is how is that a lot of money, but you're paying Nylander 11.5 with a no trade clause? Fool. You can't trade him. Nylander could be dog shit the last 4 years of that contract, and you got to eat that money. So unless you get him to waive that no trade clause somehow. It's just weird, man. And they're going to extend Marner. I'm sure he's going to be 11.7 or something. And it's just funny. It's funny the excuses they come up with when they don't get certain players and they don't have an idea. Treliving, Shanahan, they don't really have a way to win. And I remember hearing Bourne and Kipper and Bourne talk about, why can't you just win with offense? The Leafs need to win with offense. And what team is going to win with offense in the playoffs? What team is going to score 5-6 times every time they play a tough matchup? It's hard to do. The only way, you have to know how to win 5-4, 6-5, but you also have to know how to win 2-1 or 1-0 or 3-2, which is what the Panthers do, is what a lot of teams do in the playoffs when it gets tough. You have to know how to play those games. And I actually thought the Leafs took a step forward. I've said it before, this in the series against Boston, once they went down, once it was 3-1 and they almost came back, they played really well those two games. They play tough and they play hard.
Yeah, they played well. There's two factors. They played the kind of game that they could afford to play at that point. And also when teams are up 3-1, it gets harder to close it out, and the Bruins don't have a ton of offense. So it just made it a little bit easier for the Leafs to hold on to tight games. But they did play the kind of style that you needed finally after so many years with Kiev. And so it may have been mini proof that that's one way to play. But again, the matchup and, the team you were going up against and stuff, may not have been as simple to do against a better, deeper team or more experienced team in terms of winning in the playoffs, going deep like the Panthers were. But to me, at the end of the day, the point is this, man, and we can close it there. You have been with this team for a long time now, this core. We all know it. It's been, even after the Montreal series years ago, everybody's saying this year we've blown up, blah, blah, blah. Bill Cito comes in, First year sees the team, deep team, talented team, loses in the first round to Tampa in 6 games, but they're competitive and they at times look better than the Lightning in terms of skill. What does he do? He builds on that team for the next season, makes it deeper. Even when the Quenville scandal happens, keeps Bruno, keeps that same culture, same thing going. Bruno, one of the best teams ever in the regular season, break records, scored a ton of goals, beautiful. And what does he do? He gives up a ton of things at the deadline and brings Giroux and Vince Benchara, makes it the deepest team in the league even deeper. And they go and look like crap against the Caps, even though they beat the Caps in 6 because too much talent, but they look like crap. And then even though they have more skill than the Lightning, they get swept. Immediately trades Kachuk for Kachuk, Subato Uyghur, send them out. I'm not going to extend them. Refuse to give them an extension, even get into contract talks. Going to ship them off, give up some stuff, even a first round pick to get Kachuk. And then bring Maurice, even though Bruno had a hell of a season, best coach in the league, blah, blah, blah. Send him packing. Makes all the changes, bring the Stahl brothers, to teach the room, to educate the room with Maurice, be another voice in the locker room, builds character, gets guys to buy in, goes through the run, comes back, adds a ton of depth in the margins. Guys that are willing to actually fight. And the list of names is big. Mikola, Kulikov, Oyel, Stanland, and then you still have Lomberg and Cousins, and then Brodino, Caposo, and Lawrence. All these guys who contributed, Rodriguez, all these guys, Lustrani got extended, all that stuff around the really talented core. And then you win, man. And Bob went from being a really, really, overpaid goalie to all of a sudden the last 2 seasons having a good defensive system, thriving because he was put in the position to succeed. So yeah, man, you gotta be bold. And if you want to win, let's say this, it's obvious that the Leafs front office is not serious about winning in the playoffs. It is not their number one priority. They may say it, and they're gonna have to say it. It is not their number one priority. That's where I'm gonna end. It's like it's obvious that you can say with confidence that their number one priority for the ownership group and the people in the front office is not to win in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they would like to. They would like, if it happens with this core, they're going to try to put a few players in there to try to patch, the thing. I want to see Berube can actually get them to play better defense because I just don't buy it.
Yeah, and he might be able to for the season, and then eventually it's just gonna, once it gets really hard and it's
the playoffs are grueling, bro.
Once it's like game 80, and Marner has like a career high hits, he's gonna be exhausted. They're not gonna. But yeah, I think Zito had a vision from the very beginning. It's funny that some teams passed on him, and also he's the one that called Maurice. The way I remember, he called Maurice and asked him what he was up to. So he intentionally, did that to see. I think he was looking for a coach that could give him.
He was his guy. He was his guy from the start. He knew him. He knew that he knew his hockey IQ. He understood his character. He understood his experience and his hunger to win. And the staff he would bring with Jamie Compton, who's a champion, and he just the staff of the Panthers doesn't get enough shine. He's built that goalie with Luongo, that goalie department that's now like rebuilding every year. They draft the goalie every year. They're really investing in that. He's brought a really good structure, but again, the emphasis there is not to get the biggest names and the flashiest team. It's to win, bro. He wants to win. He wants to build, like Maurice has the plan from beginning of the season where they're working on, he said, 3 to 4 things all year and refining them and becomes an identity. By the time you're in the playoffs, you have to tweak things. You have to remind guys, but the identity is built so that you give yourself the best chance at winning with those 3 to 4 things that you need to do. And I never hear Keefe or some of these other coaches talk about their team that way, right? They talk game to game, basically, but they don't talk about a process, a system, a goal. There's like a chart, almost like these guys are tracking where they want to be. And Marie says that I know where I want my guys to be by the time we're in like the 3rd round or the 2nd round of the playoffs, right? And sometimes you fail at that, but that's the goal. And I think with some of these other guys, and in the front offices, you don't see that level of commitment and identity. The OEL signing, as an example, and I'm trying to hate on that because I also think he's getting too much hate. I think Tanev is being overlooked. I think that's a riskier signing, in my opinion, given the stakes and what they expect him to do and how long that is, and he's getting paid more. So I want to say, to me, that Tanev is the riskier signing compare. But the OEL thing is, he feels to me like a patchwork for the power play versus a clear plan of how you're going to use that guy. OEL was there was a plan on how to use OEL for the Panthers.
Yeah, he was
And
gonna step
then they
in
had to hide him
for
a bit when the time came to hide
yeah,
him. And they
he
did.
was gonna step in for Montour, which he did a really good job. I was looking at all the goals they score. They posted it about 4 weeks ago, and I watched all the goals that the Panthers scored during the season, and OEL had like 5 or 6 in the first like 20 games. He was on a roll. He was playing on the power play, and then he slowed down once Montour came back, and things went back to normal. And that's why the Leafs got him. They wanted Montour. They wanted someone that could quarterback the power play other than Riley, because it's a disaster making passes and defending. Riley's one of the most overrated defensemen in this league, in my opinion. But that's because of how they use him and how he's used to playing. Like it's a disaster. So yeah, it's curious, man. I we'll see what happens once we get going into the season, but we'll have plenty of more to talk about in the coming weeks. We'll try to put out more videos during the week to kind of do a bit more of a deep dive on the Leafs and just in general around the league. Besides the Panthers, won the Stanley Cup, so we can move on, right? But yeah. All right,
Yeah,
y'all.
man.
Anything else?
No, man, that's it. We'll try to do more content, maybe do another video on Friday and maybe dive into their prospects and how they're sort of integrated. We talk about Easton Cowan, we talk about what the Leafs are trying to do with Robertson, and then compare that to the Panthers, kind of do a similar thing. Looking into next season of what team is going to use their draft picks better and how the managers are managing the development of those. That would be one topic we could do. Another one that I've been thinking about is scoring in the playoffs, like why certain teams have a hard time scoring even though they have the skills. And the Panthers at times have had a hard time scoring. So we can break that down and do a comparison. But yeah, just gonna keep the content going. So if you guys want to stick around, if you got this far, then help support us and we'll keep growing the channel.
All right, y'all. We'll catch you all at the end of the week or next week. Peace.